Coming up, enough is enough. We're tired of the feds pushing pilots around. Find out what AOPA is doing to make it stop. And the Solar Impulse has landed in the nation's capital. We have an interview with the pilots.
Plus, I'm Paul here about Dana Point, California, where we're going to learn what you need to do if you have to dip in the water.
David, comfort.
AOPA Live this week begins in just a moment. Enough is enough, and it's been more than long enough. AOPA is demanding answers from Customs and Border Protection. Hello everyone, I'm Warren Morningstar, sitting in for Tom Haynes this week. Well, Customs and Border Patrol has detained and searched dozens of pilots and aircraft, maybe a lot more, and they've done it deep inside the United States, far from any border. No doubt they're doing it, but plenty of doubt about whether they have the authority to do it.
We can't find the authority. We've done some research on it. We can't find the authority for CBP deep within the interior of the United States to go around monitoring general aviation aircraft, stopping general aviation aircraft, detaining the pilot of the aircraft or his passengers, and then doing a full search of the aircraft. We can't find the authority for doing that deep within the United States.
AOPA has sent a letter to CBP demanding a full explanation regarding the legal basis for CBP to stop and detain aircraft and conduct searches. And AOPA wants to know why pilots are being targeted, and we've been asking since February.
If you don't want to respond to us, fine. We'll just have a request sent over to Congress to launch a congressional inquiry. Maybe they would feel better about sitting in front of a bunch of cameras answering questions in a congressional hearing rather than responding to our letters.
And there is a larger issue here.
Even if the Customs and Border Patrol people have the authority to do what they're doing, that does not make it right. For example, say it was a U.S. Marshal that was doing the stopping. They have plenty of authority. They have authority everywhere. We still would not be satisfied with this type of behavior because we do not know why these stops are being made. You ought to have some reason for making the basic stop, and we're at a total loss as to what those reasons are.
So what should you do if Customs and Border Patrol agents or other law enforcement officers want to see your papers and search your airplane? AOPA has put together an e-board reference guide to help you. You can find it on AOPA.org. And there's something you can do to help AOPA. We want to know about every stop and search inside the U.S. If it's happened to you, send the details via email to gasecurity@aopa.org. Well, last week, EAA finalized the contract with FAA for air traffic control services at AirVenture. EAA said it signed the $447,000 contract under protest. And while this is the first year that FAA has charged both Sun 'n Fun and EAA for air traffic control services, it's not a first by any means. FAA has charged for additional air traffic control services at special events for at least a decade. Organizations and host communities have paid special FAA charges for events like NASCAR races, the Super Bowl, and even AOPA's fly-in and summit events. But no special ATC fees for the Solar Impulse, and the no-fuel airplane also got a special break when it landed at Dulles Airport outside Washington, D.C. shortly after midnight Sunday morning. The special break? Dulles waived the landing fee. Some 14 hours earlier, the aircraft had taken off from Lincoln Field in Cincinnati, but not without some difficulty.
No, this morning we were a little bit delayed because the airplane was completely wet because of the fog in Cincinnati. So the team had to clean it, dry it with a syringe to pump the water out of the aileron.
This was the next to the last leg of Solar Impulse's flight across the U.S. This week, the aircraft lives in a special hangar next to the Udvar-Hazy Center of the National Air and Space Museum. Next week, it will complete the final leg to New York. And while this is a pioneering aircraft, the pilots told AOPA Live that the reason for the flight extends well beyond aviation.
But Solar Impulse does not have the goal of making a revolution in air transport, to be very honest. We have the goal of making a revolution in the mindset of the people when they think about energy, when they think about clean technologies, when they think about efficiency. And all these technologies we have in the plane can be used everywhere on the ground.
If you look at the partners and the companies who have brought the technologies which is on this airplane, all but one are not coming from the aviation world. And their interest is to develop technologies for their own applications, their clients, which are automobile industry, home building, appliances and so on. And what we have here is already going into this product. So these are the side benefits, in fact, of these developments and the research which has been done to make this airplane fly.
Even so, Solar Impulse has innovations that may someday appear in general aviation aircraft. The carbon fiber structure is extraordinarily light and strong. The American-built solar cells are the most efficient yet, and they are very light and thin.
And we also have something really interesting that probably a lot of pilots would like to have on their airplane. It's a very, very precise indication of the bank. Banking left or right, with a precision of 1 degree. And this has been made by the Omega company, the watch company. And this, on a normal airplane, would give an extremely precise indication of the bank. And I'm sure this will make its way through to normal aviation.
And in a sense, Solar Impulse is a return to the beginnings.
Coming to America is something different. Coming to America is the highest level you can do with an airplane like that. You come to the country of the pioneers who invented aviation 100 years ago. And aviation has made now a complete cycle. You know, we can even go to the moon. And we're starting now a new cycle to fly, but with no fuel at all. So we start all over again with an airplane that flies slowly, that is sensitive to turbulence, that has only one person on board, exactly like 100 years ago. But it has no fuel and it flies forever. And a country like the United States has this capability of enthusiasm for innovation.
Next goal, around the world on solar power alone, and you can watch an in-flight interview with Andre Borschberg on AOPALive.org. Well, day 20 and still counting. 20 days past the deadline, Icon Aircraft gave the FAA to respond to its request for a weight exemption. I guess the feds don't take kindly to deadlines. And the continuing saga, the Beechcraft AT-6 light air support aircraft. That's the aircraft left at the altar when the Air Force went looking for a light attack and counterinsurgency airplane for the Afghans. The Air Force selected the Brazilian-designed A-29 Super Tucano. The GAO rejected Beechcraft's appeal of that last week. Now that pretty much exhausts every protest avenue for the Wichita plane builder, except one. Beechcraft now says it will ask Congress to put limits on the U.S. Air Force so that it can't buy the Embraer Sierra Nevada Super Tucano for other partner nations. Now that might cause some rivalry in Congress, since the Super Tucano, of course, is built in Florida, while the AT-6 is built in Kansas. And Embraer might be feeling mighty flush these days. It commissioned this cinematic short to introduce the Legacy 500 business jet.
Yeah, it's an aircraft all right, but it's like nothing I've ever seen before.
Okay, wait there. I'm on my way.
Yep, that's Jackie Chan. Embraer debuted this video at the European Business Aviation Show a few weeks ago. You can watch the full short in the Aircraft channel on AOPALive.org. Meanwhile, at the Paris Air Show, Embraer announced its next-generation E2 commercial jet and said it had commitments for 320 aircraft. Like I said, Embraer is flush. Well, if you're flying a high-end business jet like the Legacy, it's not too likely you'll ever have to ditch in the ocean. Nevertheless, it could happen no matter what you fly over the open water, and it certainly could be terrifying. But it doesn't have to be fatal. AOPA Live's Paul Harrop traveled to the coast of California to learn how to survive in the open ocean.
open ocean off Dana Point, California. A great place to be on the water in a boat, but a number of circumstances could result in a pilot having to land an airplane on these rolling waves.
Dana Point Harbor Patrol, H202 Gypsy Moon.
William Pass and the H202 Foundation is teaching a course for pilots on how to save themselves and their passengers should they wind up on runway H20.
There are so many general aviation pilots out flying coastal, flying to islands, flying, just 5 or 10 miles offshore, but probably not really aware what it means to lose an engine or even to ditch the airplane, because most pilots just think, okay, I'll just swim back to the shore.
But you won't. Once you plunge into the chilly water, you realize how fragile the human body is in these conditions.
Cold. Initially, it was very cold.
Thermal shock causes your body to panic. You've got to consciously take control of things like breathing. You will pass out. Still think you could swim it? We're only 3 miles out.
One mile in the ocean is about 66 laps in a non-Olympic pool. So most people barely can do 4 laps.
From the waterproof camera on the head of George Kunis from Pilot Getaways, you can see the waves start to scatter our group. I'm in the water with George, AOPA online editor Sarah Brown, and FAA Safety Team Program Manager Carla Borden.
As we all, when we're introduced to sudden experiences like this, is to be able to overcome the initial onrush of what we are experiencing.
The first challenge is to swim around the 41-foot Gypsy Moon and form up as a group. Swimming 100 feet in the ocean while your body is in shock takes a lot of effort.
Come on, George!
Once you rejoin with your group, you practice positions aimed at saving body heat. Then the real challenge, getting into the life raft.
We'll flip the life raft upside down, let him turn around, let him climb into the life raft.
Getting into a rescue raft is your only chance at surviving if you go down in frigid water like the North Atlantic. There, even with a dry suit on, you've got precious minutes of life left in the water. It takes the 4 of us several tries to get the raft righted and a lot of effort to get inside.
Okay, go.
Climbing in is very awkward, especially if you're out of shape.
You do unusual attitude training for your airplane, but this also helps you get used to very unnatural positions that you have to put your body in to climb into this raft.
Inside the raft, we could wait for help to come for days. Luckily for our training, the yacht was a short swim away. Back on board, we got some hands-on experience with rescue tools.
And to make the fun perfect, they can shoot the flares. So what is it, a flare? What does it mean? How much light does it produce? How much attention does it produce? And also in the water, dye. It turns green.
And you just put it in the water.
It's that hands-on experience that makes this course different.
A lot of topics we cover in the water is just being taught by a flight instructor in the career of a pilot. So you learn from a flight instructor who has never done this stuff what it means to be in the water. But you are in the water. Suddenly you have to deal with emotions. You have to deal even with the taste of salt water, which we are normally not supposed to, which we are not used to. Suddenly you have anxieties. There is no rim, there is no edge of a pool. This is the ocean. You have 170, you have 2,500 feet underneath you, so your tootsies are not touching the bottom.
The H2O2 Foundation hopes to expand the course to the East Coast to give pilots a real taste of what you would deal with if you ever wound up in the drink. On the Pacific Ocean, Paul Harrell, AOPA Live.
You can read much more on the training right now on AOPA.org. Click on the News and Video tab. While you're online, head to the Education tab where you'll find real pilot stories, and there you'll hear from a pilot who had to escape from his submerged airplane. When we come back, just how do the engineers come up with V&E for your airplane? And renting an airplane could become as easy as renting a car. You're watching AOPA Live this week. Welcome back. You're watching AOPA Live this week. Well, it's been talked about for months. Now Open Airplane is live. The project is geared at adding value to your pilot certificate by making it easier to rent airplanes. Pilots get checked out at one FBO or flight school in the program once a year, and that checkout is honored at all other locations in the program. All you have to do is reserve an airplane online and then go fly. Open Airplane co-founder Rod Rakic has high hopes for the program.
Your pilot certificate shouldn't shut off when you leave your home base. So by letting people prove that they can be a safe pilot every time, once a year, we can give them the opportunity to be able to rent an airplane is just as easily as they can rent a car.
Right now, there are 6 locations around the country where you can rent through Open Airplane. They hope to expand soon. You can read more about Open Airplane on AOPA.org. Click on the News tab. Well, you may remember this pair. We told you about Flying for Conservation's Michel Laplace-Toulouse and Alexis Pelletier last month. They are flying a Super Cub from Oregon to Kenya to raise awareness for wildlife conservation. We've got an update on their progress now. Michel earned his private pilot certificate, and the pair plan to take off this weekend. You can track them on their website, flying4conservation.org. Well, time is running out for your group to apply for the AOPA Foundation's Giving Back grants. The foundation will be awarding grants of up to $10,000 to nonprofit organizations doing charitable work using general aviation. The foundation is still looking for applications, but you do have to hurry. The deadline to apply is July 1st. Find out more at aopa.org/foundations. EADS, the parent company of Airbus, unveiled something new at the Paris Air Show this year. This is the E-Fan electric general aviation trainer concept, and it's aerobatic. The design is geared to explore technology that could cut airplane emissions. No word on when it might fly. And there's some big news in the helicopter world. Bell Helicopter announced they are getting back into the short, light single market. The company announced a new 5-seat model, also at the Paris Air Show. The design has it fly at 125 knots with a range of around 400 nautical miles. First flight is expected next year. The Bell Jet Ranger developed the SLS market segment some 50 years ago. Well, you know, David Clark headsets are legendary. You find them in some of the toughest flying environments, like helicopters and military aircraft. They're as tough as nails, and for some pilots, just about as comfortable. But no more. AOPA Live's Jim Moore borrowed the company's newest model, the Pro X, for a flight test.
Compared to David Clark's past, the differences are obvious, but the DC Pro X truly stands apart in the cockpit when the airplane is at its loudest.
Full power climb on departure out of Hartford-Brainerd Airport. And there is no noise leaking in to speak of. I've got a nice clear sound. Easily able to hear myself on the intercom as well as ATC on the radio.
The Worcester, Massachusetts company put this headset through extensive real-world testing and evaluation.
Longer than any other product that we've ever developed, about 6 months. So we've refined it. We wanted to make sure that our observations and our testing, our objective testing inside, in our laboratories translated to the real world.
Positioning on the ears is the critical part for this headset. You're going to find a sweet spot. Everyone's ears are a little bit different, but once you get it set, once you get used to where it should be on your head, the noise canceling is extremely effective.
My instructor friends at Premier Flight Center in Hartford spent many more hours trying it on for size and silence.
Passive noise canceling qualities are quite exceptional, even in flight. I tried it in everything from Skyhawks to twin-engine aircraft.
What we discovered was that we had a really appreciable amount of active attenuation that we could develop through a smaller air cup. 30 dB of active attenuation from 20 hertz to 1000 hertz. That is basically where the noise is in fixed-wing aircraft. It's all in the lower frequency range.
Each DC Pro X is custom tuned to the factory to maximize its noise canceling ability. The microphone you speak into has been redesigned, and additional microphones measure external noise to help sophisticated circuits reduce noise as much as possible.
Your body will actually bring noise to your inner ear at 30 dB. So it's only so much you can do. And it seems to me that and our engineers, that what we wanted to go with this was to leverage it to create something that was different, that was more in line with what commercial airline pilots had been flying for a long, long time.
A new production line is being set up for this new generation of headsets, and each one will be made by hand, as they always have. The DC Pro and Pro X also leave room for eyeglass frames to rest comfortably without breaking the air seal. Keller said the CFIs approved.
It's certainly noticeable that the headset is much cooler to wear. The overall headset is lighter and without any clamping force, certainly not at all uncomfortable on a prolonged day of flying.
The only knock I have is the Bluetooth interface, also a David Clark first. While my iPad delivered music beautifully, audio clarity on cell phone calls was sometimes less than perfect in my own tests. A built-in feature cuts Bluetooth audio whenever the radio intercom activates, and it takes 2 or 3 seconds for the cell phone call to fade back in. That can lead to missing a few words, a potential hiccup if you're picking up a clearance from flight service. Overall, though, this seemed like a minor drawback.
It's a really comfortable headset. The Bluetooth leaves a little bit to be desired, but it's clear enough to pick up a flight plan or make a quick call to a loved one and let them know that you're safely on the ground. For AOPA Live this week, I'm Jim Moore.
Thanks, Jim. Oh, by the way, David Clark called. They want their headset back. You can buy the DC Pro, the passive noise reduction version, directly from David Clark for $347. The DC Pro X adds active noise reduction and Bluetooth. That will set you back $637. You can read more about it online at AOPA.org and later in the August issue of AOPA Pilot Magazine. Well, have you ever wondered how engineers determine the never exceed speed for your aircraft? You know, the red line on the airspeed indicator. Rod Machado has the answer, and also the reason why you should look much more closely at some tiny holes in your elevator and ailerons.
Hello folks, I'm Rod Machado for AOPA Live. I'd like you to take a look at this video and tell me what's happening. Go ahead, take a look. Now, is that how glider pilots wave hi to each other in flight? Well, I don't think so. Take a look at this video. Is that airplane making these gyrations because Air Force pilots fly like this? Well, once again, the answer is no. What you're witnessing is something known as the continuous flutter of a control surface. And it turns out that control surfaces and the appendages to which they are connected can engage in a sort of mutually reinforced harmonic vibration, which you just observed as continuous flutter. Engineers can prevent this from happening by adding tension to the cables controlling those surfaces, or more commonly, by adding counterbalance weights to the movable surface themselves to dampen these oscillations. Now, what you see here are counterbalance weights for the ailerons, elevator, and rudder surfaces. As long as those weights are in place, you shouldn't experience flutter. Problems typically occur, however, when the control surface gains extra weight as it can when it accumulates frost on the ground or ice in the air, or when water becomes trapped inside that control surface because of plugged drain holes on the underside of that surface. Keep in mind that control surface flutter is typically a high-speed phenomena. And if you find your control surfaces vibrating at higher speeds, you'll definitely want to slow down to diminish or reduce this vibration and, upon landing, consult a qualified mechanic about the problem. But continuous flutter, relatively speaking, is not the worst type of flutter you can experience. There's another type, known as divergent flutter, and it is an extremely serious situation. Take a look at this video of a Comanche undergoing a high-speed flutter test. As the airplane is accelerated to very high speeds, speeds at and above V&E, the test pilot gives a good slap to the control yoke with the palm of his hand and attempts to induce a vibration, thereby inducing flutter. The divergent flutter on the elevator happens so quickly in this video that I'll have to show it to you again in slow motion for you to actually see it. Inside the cockpit, the pilot experiences divergent flutter as extreme control surface vibration and typically a higher pitch sound. The moment the pilot feels the extreme vibration on the yoke, and this is very important to keep in mind, the moment he feels the extreme vibration on the yoke associated with divergent flutter, he immediately reduces power and pulls aft on the elevator to load the control surface and decrease his airspeed. This is how he handles divergent flutter. But I want to make the point here that divergent flutter is not something you handle as much as it is something you avoid, because divergent flutter can lead to in-flight structural failure. So how do you avoid it? Consider this. Engineers will determine the speed at which divergent flutter occurs and call that speed VD, or the airplane's design dive speed. Then they'll take 90% of that speed and call it VNE, the never exceed speed, which is the red line on your airspeed indicator. The secret to avoiding divergent flutter is to avoid speeds above VNE. Keep in mind, however, that this assumes that the control surfaces are properly balanced in the first place. So what have we learned? Number one, during pre-flight, make sure the drain ports on the flight control surfaces are unobstructed, and before departure, remove any frost from your airplane. Number two, on an airplane not approved for flight into known icing conditions, the accumulation of ice on the control surface changes its mass balance characteristics, perhaps reducing the speed at which divergent flutter might occur. And this is just another reason to avoid in-flight icing. Number three, if you experience any continuous vibration on the controls, you certainly want to avoid higher speeds, since continuous flutter can increase the likelihood that divergent flutter will occur at lower speeds. Number four, if you're operating at higher speeds and experience the extreme vibration associated with divergent flutter on your flight controls, immediately pull your power to idle, raise the nose to load the elevator, and slow the airplane down. Number five, finally, as my cheerleader niece might say, never, 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 no, no way, ever lose control of your airspeed. It's almost impossible to experience in-flight structural failure as long as you remain in control of your airspeed, even in the most extremes of turbulence. But lose control of your machine and let it pop out the bottom of a cloud at speeds above VNE, and all bets are off. I'm Rod Machado for AOPA Live.
Thanks, Rod. Got me all aflutter there. Remember, you can always get more from Rod at his website, rodmachado.com.
Look at the lines on these two airplanes, okay? Does this look like something, a throwback from, it looks like something like an Art Deco kind of thing, as opposed to this magnificent Beechcraft product?
It's got the radial engine, and the thing is, these Eastern Bloc airplanes, they defy the laws of economics because they weren't built by the lowest bidder. You know, yours is built by the lowest bidder, and this one, it's a jobs program.
It was built by the only bidder.
And we're at it again. Our series Fly-Offs pits two similar airplanes flown by two different editors head-to-head. The latest episode is East versus West. We rehash the Cold War pitting a T-34 Mentor against a Nanjing CJ-6. You can see the full video in the July digital edition of AOPA Pilot. It's out now. And we'll leave you with some shots from the fly-off. For Tom Haynes, I'm Warren Morningstar. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again next Thursday.